Good afternoon, Nevada. The Senate will come to order. The Secretary will call the roll.
Senator Brooks. Senator Cancella. Senator Canizaro. Senator Dennis. Senator Dondero Loop. Senator Gansert. Senator Gokachia. Senator Hammond. Senator Hansen. Senator Hardy. Senator Harris. Senator Kekeffer. Senator Orangel. Senator Parks. Senator Pickard. Senator Ratty. Senator Scheibel. Senator Settlemeyer. Senator Washington. Senator Woodhouse. Senator Spearman.
Present.
Thank you. Let the record reflect there are 21 senators present. Please rise for the invocation by our very own Senator Heidi Cancer.
Thank you, Madam President. Today we face serious challenges in our state. Nevadans are struggling to make ends meet and are also concerned about their health and the health of their families. While we work together to address what we can, we need to keep in mind every Nevadan. We are honored to serve as members of this body. As we work together to make the best decisions possible, please bless the members of the legislature and our staff. Amen.
Thank you. Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Order of business number 3, reading and approval of the journal. By previous order of the Senate, the reading of the journal is dispensed with, and the President and Secretary are authorized to make the necessary corrections and additions. Order of business number 6, messages from the Assembly.
Assembly Chamber, Carson City, July 13th, 2020. To the Honorable Senate, I have the honor to inform your Honorable Body the Assembly in this day passed Senate Bills numbers 1, 2. Signed, Carol Iola Sella, Assistant Chief Clerk of the Assembly. End of messages.
Thank you. Order of business number 9, motions, resolutions, and notices. Senator Canizaro.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole for the purpose of considering SB4, and any other matters relating to the state budget shortfall, and that Senator Canizaro serve as the chair and Senator Rowdy serve as the vice chair.
Thank you. Senator Canizaro has made a motion. Are there any remarks? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed,
Aye.
nay. Motion's carried. We will be in a little bit of a recess.
Committee of the Whole will now come to order. We have our first item on our agenda for today for members of the committee and those of you who are watching us online. We have a work session scheduled for Senate Bill number 4. You will recall that we heard this particular bill earlier this week. It is a bill that relates to revises provisions governing public borrowing and relates to more or less a short-term line of credit. We took testimony and took questions from the committee members, and at this point in time, I would note that committee members and those of you watching online should see up here in just a moment 2 different exhibits to go along with today's work session. There is one that is entitled Senate Bill 4, 31st Special Session, Senate Committee of the Whole, Work Session, July 14th of 2020, with several bulleted points there for your reference. And additionally, a mock-up entitled Proposed Amendment Number 3 to Senate Bill 4 that has the language for the amendment that will be proposed as well today. We are assisted today by our very capable and wonderful staff from the Fiscal Analysis Division, Mark Krompottek, who is our fiscal analyst and has been with us to listen to all of our testimony and answer several questions for all of us. And so we would invite him to walk us through the bill and then give an opportunity for members of the committee to ask any questions as well. We also have with us, I believe, remotely, our Treasurer, Zach Conine, and Chief Deputy Treasurer, Tara Hagan, who have also been working on this bill, as well as the amendments. And then we will turn it over to Senator Brooks to talk a little bit about the proposed mock-up amendment number 3 to Senate Bill 4. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Krompottek to give us just a brief walkthrough on Senate Bill number 4.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 4 revises provisions governing public borrowing. Section 1 of SB 4 authorizes the State Board of Finance to issue general obligation bonds, general obligation interim debentures, for the purpose of paying for the general operations of the state. The aggregate principal amount of such interim debentures outstanding at any one time may not exceed $150 million. Section 2 of the bill removes the term bank service charges and instead requires the state treasurer to make payments for bond administrative expenses, including expenses incurred to administer an interim debenture line of credit, notes, or bonds from the Consolidated Bond Interest and Redemption Fund. Section 3 authorizes an act or resolution to include such terms if the act or resolution is for the issuance of securities bearing interest at a variable rate of interest or securities with a term of 270 days or less, issued as commercial paper under a program for the issuance of commercial paper. Section 4 of the bill authorizes such authority to also be delegated to the agent who is designated to fix interest rates. Section 5 of the bill authorizes interim debentures to be in the form of a line of credit, the proceeds of which are used for the general operations of the state or to pay for the costs of a project. And Section 6 requires an interim debenture in the form of a line of credit to mature within 3 years from the first date on which a draw is made under the line of credit. Senate bill is effective upon passage and approval. Thank you.
Any questions from members of the committee for Mr. Kropotkin or for our state treasurer, Mr. Conine? Senator Washington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is, let's see, in section number 5, it says it's to help to pay for the cost of a project. What are those projects? I mean, what do you describe as a project? It's not for salaries, correct?
That would not include general operations of the state, Senator Washington. As I understand it, the cost of a project would cover something on the order of a capital improvement project that the state embarks upon each biennium.
Any additional questions from members of the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Kropotkin. We appreciate all of your very hard work on this bill and being able to answer our questions. I'm now going to turn it over to Senator Brooks to give a description of the proposed amendment number 3 to Senate Bill number 4. Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Amendment number 3 to Senate Bill number 4 accomplishes a few things. Section 1 of Senate Bill 4 authorizes the State Board of Finance to issue general obligation interim debentures for the purpose of paying for the general operations of the state. The aggregate principal amount of such interim debentures outstanding at any one time may not exceed $150 million. Section 2, well, I'm sorry, I'm going to skip to the meat of the amendment. It does two things. One of those things is that it makes all the provisions of this, the changes that are made in this bill, it sunsets them until June 30, 2021, the end of fiscal year 2021. And so if they were used in the fiscal year 2021, we could discuss in the next regular session whether or not we wanted to keep these tools or modify them. And the second significant thing that it does is it requires a definition of when the trigger takes place to actually use these tools. And that would be based on a liquidity issue in the state of Nevada, not a budget issue, but a liquidity issue. And that would be triggered by us getting to a threshold where we got to a low enough amount in cash reserves based upon the averages of the months prior to us using this tool. And it would also, if used, before it could be used, a notification would be sent to the governor, the governor's office of finance, and the legislative fiscal staff. And then the interim finance committee could call the treasurer to committee and explain how and why it was used. And that is what the amendment does.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the committee regarding the proposed amendment? Seeing none, thank you, Senator Brooks, for walking us through the amendment. At this point in time, I would accept a motion from the committee to amend and do pass. Senator Scheibel.
I move that we amend and do pass this measure.
And a second from Senator Kiekefer. Any discussion on the motion? Senator Spearman.
No discussion, just ready, making sure I'm ready to vote.
Fantastic. Any further discussion from members of the committee? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Senate Bill 4 is an amend and do pass from the Committee of the Whole. At this point in time, members of the committee, we are going to move to the public comment portion of our agenda. For those of you who are watching online and wish to give public testimony, that public testimony can be presented by phone, as we've been doing for the last week or so. Please refer to the committee's agenda for the directions to dial in. Once you dial in, you will be entered into a queue of other callers waiting to testify. You must, of course, stay on the line until it is your time to speak, otherwise you will lose your place in the queue. Because of time considerations, as we have been doing, there will be a 2-minute limit for any public testimony given at this period of public comment. If you start to get close to that 2 minutes, I will jump in and let you know that you need to wrap up the comments. Of course, we will always take your written comments in addition to your public testimony if you have some additional things you would like the committee to be aware of. The lines are now open for public testimony, and again, that information is located on the agenda that is posted on the Nellis website on our agenda. Of course, I mentioned the written comments. If you do not wish to give public testimony but would rather have written comments added to the meeting on the legislative website in lieu of that testimony, you can find the email address to submit your comments in writing. That is also noted on today's agenda. As we have been assisted by our extremely capable Legislative Council Bureau broadcast staff who have done a remarkable job of allowing us to continue to participate and hear from members of the public despite being in some unusual circumstances. We are going to turn it over to them to walk us through our public comment portion and thank them again for all of your very hard work.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 130. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, my name is Christine Saunders, CHRISTINE SAUNDERS. I'm Policy Director with Progressive Leadership Alliance in Nevada. For our communities already suffering from underfunded schools, lack of affordable housing, and diminishing access to health care, they will be devastated by additional state budget cuts. In this time of crisis, shared sacrifice is essential, and that means calling on corporations like the mining industry to pitch in. For too long, we've allowed Nevada to be taken advantage of by corporations who fail to pay their fair share. Nevadans can't wait any longer, and we need real revenue reform now. We need to cut mining sweetheart tax deductions in order to prevent cuts to education and other essential state services. Despite gross proceeds of over $7 billion in 2019, mining only paid a little over $100 million in state and local taxes. In unprecedented times, we need unprecedented action, and that means, for the first time ever, standing up to the mining industry. I urge you to be bold for Nevadans. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 577. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, Chris Daly, CHRISDALY, Nevada State Education Association, the voice of Nevada educators for over 100 years. You've heard from educators from around the state. You've heard from allies like the Progressive Action of Nevada, that the legislature can do more than pass resolutions to solve the budget crisis in the state. We've talked frequently about $156 million in devastating public education cuts. You can act to stop some of these cuts. NSCA has called on $1 of new revenue for every dollar cut, limiting the deductions that the mining industry get on mining tax would get you there. In terms of mining, Nevada is the 6th largest producer of gold, and gold hit an all-time high this week. I'm sorry, not an all-time high, 9-year high this week. So the money is there. You can do better. We're asking you to be brave and be bold and do what's best for Nevada. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 358. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, my name is Selena LaRue, SELENA,
LaRue, L-A space capital R-U-E. I'm calling to echo the sentiments of so many who have contacted you over the last week. Hundreds of educators turned out last week. Thousands have sent letters asking you to stop this tired cycle of cutting education every time we have a crisis. We are nearly last in the nation in education, and every time we hit a road bump, the teachers and the students and the educators are harmed, and we have to claw our way back over the course of the next 10 years, even to get back to quote unquote normal, which is not good enough. You have better options. You can be better. It is time to look at new revenue. It is time to ask the mines to pay their fair share. They are making record profits while the rest of us are suffering, and you are thinking about endangering student lives by cutting education in a pandemic. This is absurd, and it is time to be bold and be brave and raise the revenue that we need. Thank you.
Madam Chair, that concludes public comment.
Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And thank you for everyone who has been sharing their public comments with us. We definitely appreciate hearing from all of you. At this point in time, the committee has completed its work for this particular agenda. At this point, I would accept a motion, Senator Woodhouse.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the Senate Committee of the Whole do rise and report to the Senate.
Senator Parks.
I second that motion.
You have all heard the motion. Are there any remarks? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Committee of the Whole is dissolved, and the Senate will be in a brief recess.
The Senate will come to order. Good evening. Order of business number 4, reports of committees.
Madam President, your committee of the whole to which was referred Senate Bill number 4 has had the same under consideration. Begs the report send back to recommendation amended to pass as amended. Signed Senator Nicole Canizaro, Chair. End of reports.
Thank you. Order of business number 6, messages from the Assembly.
Assembly Chamber, Carson City, July 14, 2020. To the Honorable Senate, I have the honor to inform your Honorable Body that the Assembly this day passed Assembly Joint Resolution number 1, signed Carol Iola Sala, Assistant Chief Clerk of the Assembly. End of messages.
Thank you. Order of business number 9, motions, resolutions, and notices.
Assembly Joint Resolution number 1, introduced by Assembly Committee of the Whole, urges the President and Congress of the United States to provide flexible funding for state, local, and tribal governments to account for anticipated public budget shortfalls as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. End of resolution.
Thank you. Senator Canizaro.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that all necessary rules be suspended. Reading so far had considered first reading. Rules further suspended, and that Assembly Joint Resolution number 1 be declared an emergency measure under the Constitution and placed on third reading and final passage.
Thank you. Senator Canizaro has made a motion. Are there any remarks? Senator Canizaro.
Thank you, Madam President. This motion requests for Assembly Joint Resolution number 1 to be declared an emergency measure, and given the nature of our proceedings before us, should be declared an emergency measure so that we can have a swift and speedy consideration of the matter.
Thank you, Senator Canizaro. Senator Kinsella. All right. Are there any further remarks? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
And that concludes under order of business number 9.
Thank you. Order of business number 13, general file.
Senate Bill number 4, introduced by Senate Committee of the Whole, revises provisions governing public borrowing. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in the Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1 of Section 1.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the bill?
I have amendment number 3, proposed by Senate Committee of the Whole.
Thank you. Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that we dispense with the reading of Amendment Number 3 to Senate Bill 4.
Thank you. If there are no objections, so ordered. Senator Brooks.
I move that the Senate adopt Amendment Number 3 to Senate Bill Number 4.
All right. Are there any further remarks? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Are there any further amendments to the bill?
There are none.
Thank you. The bill is ready for final action. Moving back to order business number 9, motions, resolutions, and notices. Senator Canizaro.
Thank you, Madam President. I move that all necessary rules be suspended, that the reprinting of Senate Bill number 4 be dispensed with, and that the Secretary be authorized to insert Amendment number 3 adopted by the Senate, and the bill be immediately placed on general file for final passage.
Thank you. You have heard Senator Canizaro make a motion. Are there any remarks? All right. Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Senate Bill number 1.
Number 13? No, not yet. Holding.
Senate Bill. Yes, we are. We're always under 13 right now.
But do you need to close 9?
13. Just go to 13.
I'm still on 13. Never mind the sidebar. All right. I'm on 13.
Senate Bill number 4, introduced by Senate Committee of the Whole, temporarily revises provisions governing public borrowing. The people of the state of Nevada, represented in the Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1 to Section 1.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none. Section 9, end of Section 9, end of bill.
Thank you. Are there any remarks from the floor? Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Madam President. Senate Bill 4, as amended, revises provisions governing public borrowing. Section 1, as amended, requires that the state treasurer to submit a certificate or certification to the State Board of Finance if the cash balance in the state general fund has fallen below 25% of its lowest average monthly balance for the immediately preceding 36 months, or that the cash balance in the state general fund is insufficient to meet expected future obligations anticipated to be paid with the immediately succeeding 120 calendar days. Additionally, Section 1, as amended, requires that on the date which the state treasurer submits the certification to the State Board of Finance. The State Treasurer shall also transmit notice to of the certification to the Director of the Legislative Council Bureau for transmittal to the Legislature, if the Legislature is in session, or to the Interim Finance Committee if the Legislature is not in session. If the State Board of Finance concurs with the certification submitted by the State Treasurer, the State Board of Finance may issue general obligation interim debentures payable from taxes or special obligation interim debentures, which may be in the form of a line of credit, note, or bond for purposes of paying for the general operations of the state of at any time or from time to time in a face amount not to exceed $150 million. The aggregate principal amount of any such interim debentures outstanding at one time may not exceed $150 million. Proceeds from the sale of interim debentures, as well as interest and income earned on any interim debenture issued after deducting applicable charges and bond administrative expenses, must be deposited in the state general fund and used for the general operation of the state. Section 2 of this bill temporarily removes the term bank service charges and instead requires the state treasurer to make payments for bond administrative expenses and establishes a definition of bond administrative expenses and requires those expenses to be paid from the consolidated bond interest and redemption fund. Section 3 stipulates that in the case of securities bearing a variable interest rate, or in the case of securities having terms of 270 days or less issued as commercial paper under a program for the issuance of commercial paper, to be deposited in the state general fund and used for the general operations of the state, or to refinance previously issued commercial paper or other securities. Section 3 also requires such an act or resolution to specify parameters for the interest rate if it is to be fixed by an agent. This section is effective until June 30th, 2021. Section 4 of this bill authorizes the delegation of certain authorities to an agent who is designated to fix interest rates. This section is also effective until June 30th, 2021. Section 5 of this bill authorizes such interim debentures to be in the form of a note, bond, or line of credit agreement with a bank or other lender, the proceeds of which are used for general operations of the state or to pay the cost of a project. Until June 30th, 2021, Section 5 also temporarily authorizes interim debentures and bond administrative expenses to be secured by the pledge of security interest in and first lien on certain monies and revenues. Section 6 of this bill requires an interim debenture in the form of a line of credit to mature within the 3 years from the first date of which a draw is made under that line of credit. Section 8 establishes that the State Board of Finance shall not approve the issuance of any interim debenture pursuant to Section 1 on the Act after June 30th, 2021. And finally, Senate bill as amended becomes effective upon passage and approval pursuant to Section 9, expires by limitation on June 30th, 2021.
Thank you, Senator Brooks. Further remarks, Senator Kiefer?
Thank you very much, Madam President. I would like to speak in support of Senate Bill 4 with the amendments as they are adopted. I'd like to thank my colleagues from Senate District 3 and 9 working with me and the Treasurer to overcome some initial hurdles. I think ultimately the product that we've come out with makes this bill certainly appropriate for what we're doing here, in that it would provide some flexibility to the State Treasurer to deal with cash flow problems should they arise sometime during this fiscal year. And for that limited purpose and with certain oversight and flexibility and reporting requirements, it makes sense to me that this would be in place for the remainder of this fiscal year, and then we can revisit the issue during the regular legislative session in February. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Senator Kiefer. Senator Dennis.
Thank you. I too support it. This bill, I think that this is a good tool to have to be able to help us, especially now during this time. I just had one question. I think this came up during the original presentation. Just had a question, though, on how this would affect our affordability rating.
There's a question on the floor. Senator Scheibel.
I'm happy to respond to this question, and the answer is that it will not affect our affordability rating. This is included within it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that because it's not a negative thing, I think this will also show that we're trying to be responsible. So I support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Kiefer.
Thank you, Madam President. Certainly, my colleague is correct that the bill on its surface does not affect our debt affordability. Although if debts are taken out and the state incurs additional debt, it could limit affordability for our next capital improvement program, but that would be predicated on actual action taking place utilizing these instruments. I think the likelihood of that at this point is low, but so I think I shared some of the same concerns about our affordability and what that would mean for future biennia, but I feel comfortable certainly moving forward with it as it stands. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kiefer. Are there any further remarks? All right, hearing none, the Secretary will open the roll.
Senator Spearman, do you vote yes or no on Senate Bill number 4?
I vote yes.
All right, does anyone wish to change his or her vote? Okay, doesn't look like it, so the Secretary will close the roll. The vote on Senate Bill 4 is 21 in favor, 0 against. The bill, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Order of the Assembly.
Assembly Joint Resolution Number 1, introduced by Assembly Committee of the Whole, urges the President and Congress of the United States to provide flexible funding for state, local, and tribal governments to account for anticipated public budget shortfalls as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. End of resolution.
Thank you. Are there any amendments to the bill?
There are none. End of resolution.
Thank you. Are there any remarks from the floor? Senator Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Madam President. The resolution before you today, Assembly Joint Resolution Number 1, urges the President and Congress of the United States to provide flexible funding for state, local, and tribal governments to account for anticipated public budget shortfalls as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. As noted in AJR 1, our state, local, and tribal governments have been on the front lines for months responding to the devastating impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. They have taken decisive and dramatic actions in an effort to comply with Centers for Disease Control guidance. And now, as a result, we face an economic crisis of unprecedented proportions. Our unemployment rate has skyrocketed. Our budget shortfall, as this committee has heard and this Senate floor has heard, is at least a $1.2 billion shortfall for the fiscal year of 2020-21. And Nevada's government at all levels, state, local, and tribal, will be forced to implement deep and disturbing cuts in services and programs, many of which will affect persons most impacted by this pandemic. What we need is federal relief, and we need it now. One piece of federal legislation, which has been languishing for nearly 3 months, that we need action on immediately is the Health and Economic Recovery Omnibus Emergency Solutions Act, also known as the HEROES Act. This act would provide $3 trillion in federal relief to the states in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Some key highlights of this bill include a $500 billion in direct funding to state governments and $375 billion in direct funding to cities and local governments to assist with the fiscal impacts from the public health emergency caused by the coronavirus. Another round of direct payments of as much as $1,200 for each individual and as many as 3 dependents. An extension of the pandemic and extended unemployment compensation through January 31st of 2021, as well as an extension to the supplement to state and federal unemployment benefits through January 31st of 2021. An extension of refundable tax credits for paid sick and family leave through the end of 2021 and increases on the limits for those paid leave credits. And a 14% increase in federal Medicaid assistance percentage payments to state Medicaid programs. As you can imagine, this assistance is vital to helping Nevada claw its way out of this tremendous budget crisis. In short, we need all the help that we can get. Nevada is home to military installations, a test site, millions of acres of federal lands, and national parks and recreation areas. The least that we can ask for in return for hosting these national treasures and federal facilities is some help from the federal government, and especially in this extreme time of need. We are at the epicenter of a national economic downturn, and the grim fiscal situation in which we find ourselves is due largely to forces outside of our control. We know that the proposed cuts we are forced to make are being made for those least fortunate among us, including children, seniors, the sick, our veterans, our dedicated workers, and our rural and urban communities. Unlike Nevada, which must balance its budget, the federal government does not, and it can certainly provide further relief to the great state of Nevada. The CARES Act has certainly helped with the direct response to COVID-19, but we need more flexible relief for our budget challenges. The HEROES Act and other federal legislation will certainly help in this unprecedented crisis, and we need immediate action by Congress. That is why this particular resolution is so important. We must send a clear message to Washington that we need more help. In short, I urge my colleagues in the Senate to pass this resolution unanimously and to send Nevada's clear and unified voice to the federal government and Congress to step up and help the state of Nevada in these desperate and unprecedented times. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. For the record, to be clear, it's important that we note that as of today, our House of Representatives has taken action, and in particular, our Nevada delegation in Congresspeople Horsford, Lee, and Titus have all voted and passed the HEROES Act, and it's awaiting a vote in the Senate. And I want to make sure that's clear for our Senate Journal as we look back, so that if and when this assistance does arrive, we do remember that we have Congresspeople fighting for Nevadans every day in Washington, and that I have full faith our senators will do the same if and when given the opportunity to vote on the measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Kinsella. Senator Settlemeyer.
Thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor. In that respect, I appreciate the comments on the bill, but I don't really see that within AGR 1. The comments that were from our colleague from Senate District 6, I see nowhere in it. I think what's important about this, and the reason I'm supporting it, is that it talks about flexibility, which is so necessary with these funds. As we've all had the opportunity to sit down and discuss this budget and what can be done or can't be done, and then having to find other ways around it, or ways to make sure to protect our most vulnerable in the state of Nevada. It's obvious that we need that flexibility. The flexibility that this body has. Because my understanding is the expenses for this legislative session are actually can be paired through the CARES Act. So that money didn't have to come away from any program. So that we could look at the expenses such as the adoptive ed dental program, which is only $1 million. Who knows? I hope we don't continue on the legislative session to total that much money. But the way it looks, who knows? The ability of using that funds to look at those individuals whose lives have been upset by COVID, who are now having to work from home, who never would have ever imagined working from home before or being schooled at home. Again, those expenses have been substantially changed due to COVID. And those expenses, I mean, we can actually be paying our state employees out of the CARES Act if we chose. And that's the flexibility we need to be able to put those funds to those goals. I'm very fortunate that Congressman Amadei was able to provide us numerous times now with updates on the COVID situation. He's the only member of the federal delegation who has reached out to me as a minority leader to actually give me information about what's going on in DC on a bi-weekly basis. And in that respect, we've already spent $13 billion from the federal government because of the Congress and the President of the United States has sent us $13 billion. Starting in mid-March, that means we have spent over $86 million a day for the state of Nevada from the federal government. Any other funds, though, and the funds we already have, we need more flexibility. Look what's happened to us. We have had the highest recorded unemployment in the nation ever. 30%. The Depression was only 26%. 30%. Now, of course, people are telling me that there's some fraud in there, so it may not actually be that high. But we need flexibility to even use those funds to try to look at going after that fraud, because it's unacceptable. I think we spent $240 million last week in unemployment claims. And I'm hearing the majority of those could be fraudulent. That's scary. That's money that has a lot better purpose to go to. We need the flexibility to investigate that. We also need transparency and accountability. But again, the only thing really in this bill is flexibility. No discussion of other things. We just need flexibility. And for that, I'm supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Settlemeyer. Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Madam President. I think, frankly, this whole thing, we're being played for fools. This has nothing to do with flexibility. This has to do with the state of Nevada giving an, in effect, de facto endorsement of a $3.5 trillion spending package called the HEROES Act. Now, the federal government has already given, as my colleague just pointed out, $13 billion to the state of Nevada in less than 1 year. So the idea that the federal government is somehow dropping the ball is simply a completely inaccurate statement. What this bill is nothing more than a political camouflage for a $3.5 trillion national spending bill, which is going to fund the irresponsible actions of states like California and New York throughout this entire crisis. So let's call this what it is. This is an endorsement of the HEROES Act. And when we vote right now on that board, what you're really going to do is say, do I side with the President of the United States, or do I side with Nancy Pelosi, where this bill and this whole concept originated? I support flexibility as well, but in fact, the federal government has given us almost unlimited money. When you look at what our actual budget is for the state of Nevada, what, $9 billion, a little over $9 billion, they've already given us more than our entire state budget that we approved to the legislature in aid in less than a year. They've given us money in quantities that we can't even fathom. And we're facing a $1.2 billion shortage when they've given us $13 billion. Okay, if you want to play with the flexibility on that existing money, I could see that. But that is what this bill is about. This is about calling on President Trump and the Congress of the United States to provide further flexible funding, further additional. This is an endorsement of the HEROES Act. This is a huge mistake for anybody that supports that. If you're a fiscally responsible conservative and you think federal government funding is already out of control and that we should not bail out states that have acted entirely fiscally irresponsible, not only during the COVID crisis, but in many cases for years and decades, especially our neighbors to the west, where we see people fleeing by the millions because of their irresponsible tax policies. This is a giant bailout for them. So I would urge my colleagues to be very careful on this vote, because this is a political vote. This bill is a political amendment. And when you think that it's only about adding flexibility, you better read the thing, and we shouldn't be rushing it through like we are here, because we, in fact, need to vet what I am discussing, rather than get it on the floor and vote on it in less than, 1 hour? Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam President. I would urge my colleagues to be very careful on this one, and I'm an absolute no. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hansen. Senator Spearman.
Thank you, Madam President. First, let me say this has been a crisis of unprecedented proportions. And since statistics have already been invoked, let me just talk about a couple others. We understand that the administration in Washington knew that this was coming back in November, December, January, February. It was only in March we realized here in Nevada the magnitude of this pandemic. Probably not as much, we haven't spent as much or more than they did in the Depression. But there are a couple of things that are different about the Depression. The Depression, people were not asked to wear masks, and many of them probably would have. So we have a pandemic right now where we have within our power to flatten this curve. But some of my colleagues see otherwise, and that's your choice. That's your choice. 29 and a half years, I was in the Army, defending your right to speak, to say your mind, whatever your mind tells you to say. I did that. And so today I'm going to vote yes. Specifically, the service members, the veterans, and their families, that language may not be in there. But I also know that every budget that is passed impacts military members, veterans, and their families. And oh, by the way, let's not forget that some of those military members are the very same ones who are suffering from COVID-19. My friend, Ron Pipkins, praise God, recovered from it. But he is not the only veteran suffering from this. People are hurting, and I'm not sure that people who are still waiting for their unemployment check would agree that this is frivolous. I'm not so sure that those who are in emergency rooms and the families that are praying for them. I just got a text on my phone from one of my constituents, heartbroken, 28-year-old niece has come down with COVID-19. And so you see, it's very easy to sit on our couches and watch the football game on Sunday and then pick it up Monday. This is unprecedented. This is unprecedented. And when I look at that board, when I say I'm voting yes for the people who do not have the same privilege that I do to represent people in this great state. And to say once again, these are our neighbors. They are our friends, and for some of us, they are our family members. Frivolous? I don't think so. And I would beg anyone who has that opinion to go to the hospital, to go to the morgue, go to the graveyard, and tell someone who has suffered from that and their family who has suffered from that, tell them it's frivolous. This is something we must do. Had we acted in November, December, January, or February, we would not be here now. And so act we must. I support this bill for all that is good. Military members, veterans, their families. I support this bill because it is for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Spearman. I just want the body to know that on Order of Business 13, there is a 10-minute limit on discussion, and we have two more senators. I want to make sure we get to both of them. Senator Ganser, please. Actually, you get 10 minutes.
I don't need 10 minutes.
Each person gets 10 minutes, which is, if you speak a lot, it's like a long time. Anyway.
Thank you, Madam President. This bill is about Nevada. This bill is about helping Nevadans. While the federal government may address the entire U.S., our efforts are focused on Nevada. D.C. politics has become hyperpartisan, as we all know, but we don't need to be that way in Nevada. We are experiencing unprecedented unemployment. For some of you, you'll remember in 2010, Nevada had the highest rates of unemployment, foreclosure, and bankruptcies. Right now, there's an economic gap that we need to bridge, and we're really working hard to do that. We know that small business in Nevada employs about 42% of our workforce, and the federal government has provided programs like the Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, in EIDL. They've provided resources for healthcare, all of which we need. Nevada businesses, Nevada workers need time to recover. So I'm supporting this bill because we do need an economic bridge. Times are tough. Nevadans want to get back to work. We want to stay open, but we're facing very difficult times. So again, for that reason, I'm supporting this bill. I'm focused on Nevada and what Nevadans need. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gansert. Senator Hardy.
Thank you, Madam President. I think one of the things that's in this, and pardon me if I do this, but let me read everything but the whereases. Resolve that the Assembly and the Senate being us, of the state of Nevada jointly, that the members of the 31st special session of the Nevada Legislature hereby urge President Donald J. Trump and the Congress of the United States of America to provide further flexible funding for state, local, and tribal governments to assist with anticipated public budget shortfalls as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then it goes on about where it goes and who it goes to. I'm going to repeat, further flexible funding for state, local, and tribal governments to assist with the anticipated public budget shortfalls. That's what this is about. It is And if we look at the reality of flexibility, the state has already received $800 million plus dollars. Some of that is supposed to go to local governments, and so I think when we do this letter, we have to be honest with ourselves and say, did all of that money that was supposed to go to local governments actually get to local governments? So when we start looking at flexible funding, we need to recognize that we, the state, have an obligation to those local tribal governments as well. So we need to be honest with ourselves and recognize that we need to give the local governments, give the tribal governments, however we do that, so that they can have their budget shortfalls met as well. So I am supporting this because it never uses the word hero. It never uses other words because it is further flexible funding, and those are the words. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hardy. Senator Pickard.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in support of the bill, primarily on pragmatic basis. There's so much political rhetoric infused in all that we do, and I understand that. But the reality is the federal government is likely to put more money out to the states, and we need to be willing to step up for the benefit of our constituents, of our state, and make a claim for what is made available to us. Senator Parks and I have had a conversation about trying to work on the grant office and trying to improve. We're among the last in the nation of states that apply for, let alone receive, federal grants. There is so much money on the table that we have access to that our citizens would benefit from. And I think this is an opportunity for us to take a little bit, particularly given how much of our state is owned and controlled by the federal government. The 50 states, all 50 states benefit from the state of Nevada. It's time that we step up and take a little bit of what is due to us. So I support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pickard. Senator Gokachia.
Thank you, Madam President, and I also rise in support of the bill. I got a message this morning that a good friend of mine, younger than I was, died in rural Nevada last night from the COVID. So it is real. The problem is, I don't think we want to only focus on federal relief, federal subsidy, because they also will have an end. Yes, the COVID is real in the state of Nevada. We've got to protect ourselves. We've got to do what we can to protect our constituents, but we're going to have to, yes, we need relief, but we're going to have to spend it wisely. So as we ask for relief, let us look for ways to spend it a lot wiser than what we have. I'm very concerned about some of the issues we haven't addressed yet, predominantly the unemployment insurance. There is an end to that, and there seems to be a lot of fraud. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gokachia, and I'm sorry for your friend and his family. Senator Harris.
Thank you, Madam President. As we've been up here, we've spent quite a bit of time. I've become more familiar with the state's budget than I personally would have liked. And I don't know about the rest of my colleagues, but some of these cuts that are being proposed make me feel a little bit more than uncomfortable. In order to be a fiscally responsible state, we only have a few choices. We bring in more money, or we cut to balance the budget. I think we all know who those cuts would affect, how they would affect them. And if I can take a vote today to ask the federal government for help, I'm happy to take that vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Harris. Are there any further remarks? All right, hearing none, the Secretary will open the roll.
Senator Spearman, do you vote yes or no on AJR 1?
I vote yes.
Thank you. It looks like everyone's voted. Does anyone wish to change his or her vote? All right, the secretary will close the roll. The vote on Assembly Joint Resolution 1 is 20 in favor, 1 against. The bill having received, the joint resolution having received a constitutional majority is declared passed, or does it have to go back to the Assembly? An order to the Assembly.
And that concludes order of business number 13 and business of the desk at this time.
Thank you. Order of business number 16, remarks from the floor. Senator Cannizzaro?
Thank you, Madam President. I move that the Senate stand in adjournment until the hour of 10 a.m. on Wednesday, July 15th, 2020. And I think in honor of my colleague from Senate District 19, his friend and family, and all those who are in the similar position of facing the loss of life due to the ongoing pandemic, that we adjourn in their honor.
Thank you, Senator Cannizzaro. You have heard the motion. All those in favor of adjourning till 10 o'clock tomorrow signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great, okay, motion passes. We're in adjournment. There we go. All right.